Welcome to the Arcfluent Podcast, where we talk about how design impacts the way we live, work, and invest. I'm Nick Karakaian, your host, and with me today, as usual, is my co-host and business partner, Paul Fatkins. Hey, Paul.
Hello. It's a fun one today. We get to do a trip down memory lane. Kind of.
So we have an amazing guest, Dean Mark Mistur, the Dean of College of Architecture from Kent State University.
Yeah, which both of us, you and I, both went to Kent State, as well as, Nina. So yeah, like I said, trip down memory lane. I'm sure we'll touch on a couple of things at the program and the school. So it's going to be a fun talk.
And there aren't too many deans in the world. This is a position of respect, and it's hard to get a dean's time. So we're very grateful that we're able to have him on the show. I'm super pumped for this.
Yeah. I was going to say, when we were in school, I feel like I would always run to the dean's office when I had like some critical problem. So I'm sure he's dealing with a lot, and yeah, greatly appreciate him coming on and taking the time to talk with us.
Well, with that said, let's get into it. Dean Mistur, welcome to the show. How are you?
Oh, I'm great, Nick. Thanks a lot. And good to see you both here.
Yeah. A fellow Kent Stater. So holding down the fort at Kent State. Although when we were there, it was what? Taylor Hall, Tri-Studio. I mean, we were all over the place. Yeah. So things have changed quite a bit since then, I take it.
Well, they have. I had the pleasure of being in Taylor Hall 1 week before the new Weissman Freddie building opened. And, that's to the great credit of my predecessor, Doug Steidel, who did a great job in having an international competition and allowing us to have an amazing building, this Weissman Freddie building. And for him to step away at that moment, I think was a bold move on his part. But I was very pleased and honored to be selected to be the dean back in 2016, and can hardly believe that it's been 9 years.
Well, I got to say, we're really excited to have you here, and it was great to see you in Boston the last 2 years, and then we recently also saw you at the AIA State Conference where we spoke. And one of the things that we've been planning the last couple of years was to have you on the podcast, so we're grateful that you took the time to be with us today.
Well, I'm honored. Any opportunity I get to get out there and talk with those in the profession and in academia, I think is very important. We're facing some really challenging times, and challenges are opportunities as well. So we've always got to look at both sides of the coin. And in my career, which is many years now, there've never been more challenges, more headwinds than there are right now. But on the flip side, I just see these as opportunities, and how do we respond?
Yeah. Well, that's always kind of what makes it fun. I mean, it's the same once you're out and, on the professional side. There's always something that needs to be dealt with, always a fire to put out, as they say. So it's always, like you said, you can view it as a problem or you view it as an opportunity. There's always going to be something, And
you've really done a lot with the program especially since COVID. So much has changed. The program has grown, and I was gonna say, we're not going to get into how many years Nick and I have been out of school. But you mentioned you've been there for about 9 years. I'm just curious if you can speak to, over that time, like what are some of the things that have been implemented or changed in the program? What are some of the things that you're pushing for, in terms of like reworking the program, or just like teaching the future architects? What is it that you're teaching them, or what's exciting that's
that's
happening
a good way.
At the College of Architecture?
Well, I'm going to back up a little bit and say why I even came here, and that is that I was at Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute for many years, and it's a great institution. It's an institution, though, that only had architecture in the School of Architecture. It didn't have the multiple disciplines. And it also, I'd been there so long and gone through every rank. In fact, I went to school there before I practiced a dozen years, and then started teaching as an adjunct and moved all the way up through the ranks. Now, or at that point, I was really excited to look at some different kinds of places. And one of the reasons was to not just be in a place that was private, very costly, to look at some public institutions. And Kent State really blew my mind, not in terms of how it was set up. The fact that it had gone out in a great way to do an international competition for a building. It was on a great footing, had great faculty. But it also had great promise, because I think, in contrast to some of its much earlier years, it had been a little bit more focused on its immediate region, and in terms of who was going there and where the graduates were going after that. And I came here because I really only knew that Kent State had a program, and it was a pretty large one, and I didn't know much about it. And when I visited, I was kind of blown away by the potential and said, wow, this would be a great place to help, the whole thing blossom even more from the great strengths that it had, mostly by just getting the word out and letting it be seen, taking the lid off of it. And that was very, very exciting for me to come here, and it's really happened. The dedication was really to getting the lid off of it and to letting people see. We had two strategies. One was, basically to bring outsiders in so that they would see what we were doing. So we reconstituted a very substantial review week. We set up a lecture series that's sponsored by a lot of firms. We just brought in a lot of people. And at the same time, we raised money to help support travel, to get our students out into the world, to get them to all the different places that we've gotten them to over the years. And our alums are so generous here. They've really supported that effort. And I think it's raised the confidence level of what our students see, through what our students see of where they can be, what they can do. And it's just been exciting. Those who come in see who we are, see the quality of the work, and it's just grown over the years. The quality of the design and the way we present our designs is really strong. The fact that we have the multiple disciplines that are all the scales of the built environment is for me a huge excitement, that we go from architecture to interior design, and on the other side to urban design and landscape architecture and healthcare design. It's very, very exciting to be in all of those spaces across all the scales of the environment, and to have the CUDC located in downtown Cleveland. So these have been exciting. I think bringing in a couple of great directors in a row, Yvonne Bernal and then followed by Sung-Ho Kim, have been super exciting. Sung-Ho Kim has brought, another level of approach to the profession that brings back model making, that brings back craft, that brings back the way things are assembled and made, so that we're not only in the computer box, but we're inside of it and outside of it. Materials, connections, details, tectonics come back into play with geometry and all the effects that architecture can have. So the level of excitement that's come out of that kind of hand production and the model making is just going through the curriculum, and is creating a tremendous amount of excitement internally and externally. So I'm very excited to see it. We made a commitment to excellence and relevance. That's a kind of a pairing that I like to use. I think a lot of schools have moved toward excellence in some areas that aren't so relevant, and others have moved into areas of relevance. This is how you do things right now, but not necessarily with the same level of critical and creative thinking. It's the marriage of those two, the art and science of being both forward-leaning and excellent in what you're doing and what's behind it, but also very, very relevant. And that's, I think, an elixir is a word I like to think about against some of the things that are happening in our profession, which are scary, frankly. But if academia is going to be out there and not relevant or only theoretically based, and doing paper architecture,
what's the point?
That's going to be easy to blame.
Yeah. I was going to say that's one of the things I wanted to talk about too, as we go through the conversation here. But I was going to say it's interesting you pointed out that even like having a reconnection to model making. I know in our first couple of years at Kent, there was a huge emphasis put on physical drawing, like to actually understand what a line weight is, or when you transition from using pencil to using ink and Mylar, and how important it is to, so to understand all of that in, like you said, in a physical sense before you jump into the digital, because once you get into the digital realm, it's like there's no feedback. Well, there's no connection to what you're doing.
I think it helps with conceptual design and collaboration, but also on the professional side, Paul just bought a 3D printer, and we gave a model of a custom home to our client because we thought it was fun, and we weren't even using it as a tool for design. We just we just wanted to do it because we thought it was fun. And it turns out it became a great piece for conversation and really evolved the design process. And they truly appreciated it. So I think
some people have a problem visualizing, or jumping into that digital realm. Like I said, there's just that lack of connection, lack of reality.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. I mean, forever clients have loved to see models. They can understand them. I mean, let's face it, we teach a very abstract language of drawing, right? Technical drawing it's blinding to some people, and it's, how do you interpret a 2D into a three-dimensional space and form is very, very complicated. Of course, we do very sophisticated renderings now, and computers can do all of that. We can do fly-throughs and those things, and they're great. So the client has always appreciated the model. But there's two kinds of model making. One is for presentation, and one is as part of the design process. And while the model is no longer central to the design process in firms, I think it's still central to the educational process of how to learn to become a designer, because you're actually putting things together and you're seeing space and you're making decisions based on what you do and what you see and how you can look at it at different angles. It's very, very important. But I'm not dissing the computer at all. The computer is remarkable in what it's opened up for us. We just need to use these things in tandem to help one, support the other and enhance the other. They're both incredibly important tools.
Yeah. The other thing you mentioned too, when you gave a little bit of the background of the program and some of the exciting stuff, just like, Kent's program and commitment to getting students out there. Nick and I participated in the Florence program, which I think has been a staple of the Kent State architecture program, like practically since the inception of the architecture program.
Yeah, I went back. I did undergraduate and graduate.
Yeah, but I know my friend's father actually graduated back in the 70s, I think, from Kent State.
And he went to Florence.
And he went to Florence too. So like it's been around for sure, quite a while. And the value of actually going and being on site and instead of just sitting in a classroom looking at slides of something, was just, invaluable. Like, how can it's like, oh, we're going to go to the site today and look at the building in person, that you're studying for architectural history. So it's just a phenomenal program. So I can't give enough of a shout out to that program for sure.
Well, Kent's been a leader. I mean, Kent State, I may have my facts wrong, but I believe it was the second study abroad program in Italy, period. And I think it was the first architecture study abroad program anywhere, started in 70 or 71 with Super Studio. And what a legacy. That is just really exciting. And it's been a great program, and it's set up so well at this point. We host other institutions at this point. We're university-wide. But I'm wholly committed to that kind of an education. It happened to me. Part of my background is leaving for a couple of years when I was in my undergrad to study in Switzerland. And, at that point, my own alma mater started a program in Italy, and I was going down to Rome back and forth from Switzerland to see my classmates. But I know that I was a changed person, and I wouldn't be here today. I wouldn't be a dean today if that didn't transform my life. And the way the transformations I see in students who go to Florence or study abroad for a semester is simply extraordinary. To a person, they come back owning their education. They're not doing it for their professor anymore. They're doing it because they know what they're doing, and they know what they want to get out of it. And they're a world citizen, and they just are excited. Architectural education is a wonderful thing. I mean, both in terms of how we teach people to be creative and critical, but also how we teach them to be world citizens and to design not for ourselves, but for others. And to do that, you can't do it isolated in a classroom or a studio.
Yeah.
You've got to get out into the streets and with the people you're going to design for and gain that kind of empathy, but also to inspire yourself to do things that you might think if you stay local that things can only be done the way they're done locally, whatever that locale might be. And you begin to see other things that are, were epic transformations of the way we think about the built environment for their historic period. But, how are we going to contribute to the history of the future? Which is today. And I think we have to inspire people to know that they can make a difference and be a leader.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting because, again, for me, it definitely goes back to that physical connection, because you're not sitting in a classroom, like you said, isolated, looking at a screen. We went through art history and architectural history and all these courses leading up to the Florence program. And it was just such a difference to be there, like physically present there. And like you said, to experience it firsthand. And you're not isolated in this room looking at a screen. So, yeah, that made all the difference for me, for sure.
We also, we started to realize that it's about the people, right? We're making culture, not just buildings.
When Nick and I were traveling around, there were so many connections we made just to people on the train or people at whatever cities we were going to. I mean, it was a blast just to get around and see everything all around Europe.
Yeah.
So,
it's so exciting. And so that's why we've expanded beyond Florence. Not everyone can afford to go to Florence. We have a lot of scholarships. And it's a great program. I think we have over 100 people go a year to Florence. But, in the last 2 years, we totaled it up. We've sponsored 802 student trips to somewhere. And we're going to places like,
wow.
And these are they're subsidized, studio travel, 4 to 10 days, whether it's to New York or DC or Miami or New Orleans or Denver or LA. Many times we go to Toronto, but we've also been quite a bit to other international places like Sao Paulo, Medellin, Beirut. These are really important places to go because they're not only Central European. And the most recent kind of endeavors we've got a great partnership with Tec de Monterrey, particularly in Querétaro, which is in central Mexico, but also in Mexico City, where they have another campus. And that partnership has been terrific. Their students come here, our students go there. And it's just super exciting to build those kind of institutional partnerships and opportunities for students to go for 4, 5, or 6, or 10 days somewhere to study with a professor. So faculty-led travel. It's really important to me. I really think that's transformational.
Yeah, that sounds fun. Where do I sign up?
Yeah, can I go back for a few days? That sounds awesome. Yeah.
Well, I talked about that in Boston, right? We want partnerships. And, how are we going to bring you guys into the studio? How are we going to bring other local practitioners and distant practitioners back into the studio? Because I think when I go to the term relevance, we have to be relevant as well as excellent. For me, the formula of education plus experience equals the ability to be an architect. That's been the formula forever. Well, we need to double down on that. And I think that we need to get not only as adjuncts and reviewers, but we need to find more innovative ways to get students into offices, get students and getting us partnering with you all. And hey, if that means you joining us on a trip to Paris or something like that, that'd be great. By the way, Paris is coming soon as well for the grad program. We're working with an institution over there to form a hub in Paris for a grad program that will go over with, say, 12 students or something like that, based in Paris as a hub for a European studies program, which will go to Amsterdam, Berlin, and London from Paris as the base.
Yeah, when we were in Florence for my graduate program, Paul, you weren't with us at that time, but we took a faculty-led tours of Amsterdam, Rotterdam, Paris. It was great. But to actually have a hub there would be really great. I mean, these are weekend trips, so to stay for a week or two would be more beneficial.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say too, like, some of the things you talked about, like the value of good design, or, the value of how the future architects are trained. I think there's a bit of a disconnect in the general public just about like what is good design. Like you said, sometimes it's hard for them to understand or to read some of the technical drawings. But I mean, like, there's just like this disconnect, I would say. And it's like I find with our clients a lot, like we're trying to educate to a certain point for them to better understand what we're doing in our process of designing.
We have to educate our clients, because if you're in the private sector, it comes down to bottom line. So we need to be thoughtful on, if we're investing X, we're going to get this value, and this is why we're doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I can say where I'm really concerned. What I alluded to earlier is I'm very concerned about our profession. There's a lot of headwinds facing it. Part of that is deregulation. And I think even from inside our profession, even our major institutions are probably not seeing that as clearly as I would like them to. Because in deregulation, there's states that are talking about eliminating licensure. There's places that, including some of our institutions, that are talking about eliminating education as a necessity to licensure. And the whole movement toward competency, which is not just in our discipline, that all you need to do is be competent. And that competency is on those easily measured things, right? Those things that you can add up. It's kind of like the performance-based design thing of 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Performance-based design could be wonderful if it also included social performance and cultural performance and all those other things. But it really honed in on those things you could easily measure, right? The BTUs per hour, and what it did in terms of all of those things, which produce great environmentally responsive architecture, but not necessarily holistically really responsive architecture. And now we're facing the whole issue of deregulation, where we could say, you don't even need education. You just need to be competent in these areas that we can measure, that you can do the things. But education provides the ability to think about the things. And the thinking skills, the critical thinking skills, the ability to design by doing it over and over and over and over in a free context where you can take risks and fail, versus which you can't do in practice.
Yeah.
This is the playground where you grow up and you learn to do those things and to think about the consequences. So my worry is that competency works if you think of our profession as a business. If you just think about it as serving just the client. But I like to ask our students, who's our client? Is our client the person who signs the contract and pays the bills? It's not. It's more than that. That's why we're a profession. We're a service that serves not just that client, that paying client, but all of society, because we're building a built environment that's going to be around for 50, 60, 100 years, impacting every single person who enters it, sees it, or is affected by what it did to the environment, whether it made the city livable, whether it enhances that institution's ability to do what it needs to do, how people relate to one another. And so that as a profession, to me, is critical. And I think we're losing view of that when we say we could get rid of education, we could get rid of licensure, and just make sure that buildings meet HSW, health, safety, and welfare. But the welfare, is the most misunderstood one, because people think about it as just do no harm. The welfare part is benefiting society. What are we doing to benefit or to move society forward? And that's what the AIA and NCARB and all of us should be standing for, is how are we doing things that benefit not just the business and the bottom line of making buildings, but doing something that's going to have positive consequences, not negative ones, over the many decades that it's going to be in existence.
Yeah, obviously, when you say health, safety, welfare, it's of the public, so it's within the public realm. Like when you ask the question, like, is the client the one who pays the bills? It's like yes and no. So it's like yes, he is, but also no, because again, there's this public interest that's a larger interest that's at play. I get it though. I definitely understand the frustration, because we have so many clients where it's like, why does it take 2 months to get a simple design, approval for a single family house that we're working on? It's like, well, it's just because it takes that long, because they're overwhelmed or understaffed or whatever. So I can understand it from that aspect, to like expedite the overall regulation process to get approvals. But as far as education, like going out and where it's just competency, I'd say, it's a slippery slope. Well,
it's overlooked even more in the residential side of things. I mean, I don't think people realize how much the space that's around you impacts your psychology, your productivity, your well-being. Like you can, being your best self is hard to measure, but when you're in a space that gives you confidence, comfort, and motivates you to perform, and those results are just going to be exponentially good for you and the people around you. So the value that I think, again, coming back to education and just having these conversations can go a long way to be like, we should be a little more thoughtful about this. It's just like it's like throwing the clothes on each morning. They can have an impact on how people perceive you. Same with space. right? So we need to be thoughtful about all these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely, Nick. I just couldn't agree with you more. And as I said, I'm concerned because, and the time to produce it takes some time. There's gestation periods, but there's another headwind that's going to face us. And if we don't grab onto and use AI well to further leverage and provide more value, we're going to lose a huge chunk of what we do to developers who hire AI or use AI agents to do what we've been doing. And I think this could happen very easily. I've been through several disruptive changes in my career. And, from, as you said, paper to, hand drawing to computational drawing to working from 3D back to 2D instead of 2D to 3D. This is another really, really big one. And where all the tools before that we used, we told them what to do for us. We manipulated the tools to do something for us. Now we've got a tool that we can ask to do something for us. And that's a really different skill set. And we're trying to figure out how to deal with that in education. How do you get a person who has no experience like you two do to interrogate what looks really good superficially, from an AI agent? How do you interrogate it and push it to the next level of giving something that delivers, something of consequence? But we're going to have a team of AI agents that we can employ and use. We're going to have AI agents that can do all kinds of mundane stuff that we don't want to do. Who wants to measure a building, right? When you can have it, it'll take two people days with a tape measure to figure out, and it won't be accurate.
Yeah, I was going to say, there's actually a robot dog right now already, like a robotic dog that'll walk around with a scanner on the front of it, and it'll scan your building for you.
Yeah, Mark, we just bought it.
Yeah, we actually just bought we updated our laser scanner to like the newest version of the BLK Leica.
We didn't get the robot, but we do have it on the tripod.
It was tempting though, because you're right. I mean, like, it's a tedious process, but it's a critical process too, to understand exactly what's there and have it be accurate. I mean, it's hard to plan and implement without a good solid foundation. So, yeah.
So, what are we going to do with that? Are we going to let that just do those mundane things and eliminate a third of our workforce and keep producing the same level of stuff for our clients? Or are we going to figure out how to provide more value to our clients more quickly? I mean, one of the amazing things that we've done over the years, which is phenomenal, is that, we do 10, 50, $100 million projects in whatever, a year, let's say. We design them. And we get no prototypes. Maybe we do a few mock-ups or something like that. Think of automobiles and the number of times they're tested and proven and everything. We take this enormous risk on to do that. Well, AI and predictive modeling is going to help us to actually do some virtual simulative modeling that can really demonstrate performance in different ways. And I just think we've got to jump on to the added value we can give, the added speed we can provide things at, by having it do a lot of the work that, is tedious.
Yeah. Yeah. How are you guys doing anything on the education side with your students with AI right now?
We're doing lots of things. It's not very systemic at this point, but I have said to the last 4 semesters, or right after, maybe it's 5 now, after ChatGPT came out, is please do not be afraid of this and set up a thou shalt not use ChatGPT or any other kind of AI, whether it's machine vision, machine learning, machine intelligence. Please use it. In fact, I've said, please, at the beginning of every course, ask or have a discussion with the students. What is the best use of AI? What is the worst use of AI? What is the required use of AI in this course? And what's not allowed? So, we've got people who are saying, yes, you can use it to write, but you need to cite it. You can only use it for drafts. You can't, quote it per se more than 5 words in a row, which would be plagiarism. Treat it as another writer. But the amount of research it can do for somebody really quickly, not always really accurately, it is looking at, trillions and trillions of data points that it's able to pull in very, very quickly. So that's amazing, how we can gather information. But gathering information isn't research. That's just gathering information. And then what you do with it takes a critical mindset to do it. But how do we use the agent for that? We've got people using it for machine vision, machine learning. We've got people working in the space between cyber physical reality. which is looking at how do our spaces, are eventually becoming more augmented by virtual reality, not just on the screen, but how do spaces become augmented virtually with all kinds of other things that are coming at us and hitting us. And in design, we've had lots of people working with programs that, where you speak to it and it'll design, it comes back with responses 16 and you pick number 3 and you tell it, give it some more directions and it does more work. Now, most of those have been geared toward the phantasmic and the kind of new world building kind of issues, but how are we going to employ it to do very specific things as well? Clearly it can do engineering type things as well as very kind of,
conceptual,
creating auras, conceptual things as well. Yeah. But we have to learn to own it and not let it own us and figure out how to use it. So we've been asking faculty to do that every semester, and then at the end of the semester talking back about how are we going to begin to systematize that. So we've got a task group now that's looking at how should we build this into the curriculum. And, to the credit of the state of Ohio, in their bill 96, the budget bill, which is not all to my liking because we're having more and more financial struggles, in terms of delivering a quality higher education. But still, one of the things that I like about it is that it's asking every program to integrate and to use and to demonstrate how it's using emerging technologies and AI. And that's a great thing because I think that's great of Ohio to say, yeah, every program in the state of Ohio in a state school should be figuring out how to use it. Let's not fall behind is what that message is from Ohio.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, like you said, how do you leverage it to bring more value, at the end of the day? So it's another tool that essentially is, something that you can go to, not something that you rely upon, but it's something that helps aid in the process.
I disagree. I think we're but I don't think it's a bad thing if we rely on it and use it as a tool. It's not replacing us. It's making us be more efficient. It's allowing us to focus on the important things. And it's just giving us the ability, like we don't dig big holes with shovels anymore. We use equipment. So I think it's just the next evolution.
It's another tool.
Yeah. And I think it's going to push the industry forward. So I'm 100% with you.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges in education is that faculty are really quick to say, yeah, let's add this to the curriculum, add this to the curriculum, add this to the curriculum. And I always have had to say, okay, what are you taking out? It's a zero-sum game. They don't have more hours in the day, right? So it like you say, we don't use shovels, we use large equipment. We're not teaching people to construct 3-point perspectives on a piece of paper anymore either, right? At some point you have to give up some things, right? And trust that there's tools that we can trust in and teach them how to use them and maybe the principles behind it, and certainly the principles behind it. But we have to learn to teach those things that are timeless. But if we want to add these new things, we have to figure out, how are we going to teach differently and more effectively?
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, that's it's kind of scary future, but exciting future.
Exciting.
I did want to ask. So pivoting a little bit, obviously, like you go through school, you get out, and you go into professional practice, and then seems like sometimes there's a bit of a disconnect. I'm curious, like I went to Kent, and then actually my graduate work, I didn't stay at Kent, but I went down to Cincinnati. So, they have a co-op program where you go out and you do internships. I'm curious, like, what are some of the things that Kent State is like focused on for closing that gap between like the professional world and the academic world? Obviously, the academic world, I think, is incredible for that creative spark. You don't want to lose that, but at the same time, I would say like there's definitely a little bit of a gap once you get into the professional realm and have to draft and actually, work with curtain wall details and whatever, where it's not like, some of my studio professors are like, oh, the engineer will figure that out. But I mean, like on the creative side, invaluable. Your mind was really flexing in terms of creativity and spatial awareness,
Well, I'm very much committed to that fact and closing that gap more than we have. I think in education, we haven't closed it. And part of my interest in the Midwest was I really believed that this is the place where we could do that better than anywhere, because the East and the West Coast had kind of drifted away from that in a lot of ways. It's not all institutions there, but some had and moved into a very theoretical space and talking to a shrinking echo chamber of the same people, mostly in academia, and not across between practice and education. So I really think it's important. As I said, I'm a licensed architect in New York. I haven't practiced since I came to Kent, but I wanted to maintain a practice while I was teaching and taught the integrated studio for 25 years. And I've been very committed to that. I also taught between engineering and architecture. I taught engineering students as well. And it was a very exciting program. But I believe that we need to find ways to do that. We don't have a required co-op program. I've always been a little skittish about those because in bad economic times, we end up assigning people to some pretty bad internships. And I think there are bad internships which teach you bad habits and teach you bad ethics and teach you lower your bar to the kind of design standard. Yeah. So I worry about that a little bit, though I'm more and more inclined in this last year and a half or 2 years of what's going on and the pressures on our discipline and the competency movement to say, yeah, we've done this to ourselves. We've become irrelevant. We're out there. We're not doing things that practice understands why it has any value. So, and not all practice, but some. Yeah. And I think we could do some things that begin to intersect the education and the profession more, whether it's through practicums or co-ops or just structuring internships a little bit more, where there's reflection back and forth, a two-way reflection. When you're in practice, how do you reflect on the benefits of the educational side? And when you're in education, how do you reflect on the benefits of the practice side? So that we can get that live discussion going, which I think is better than stacking them, where you have education and then practice. So 90% or so of our students, have internships, but it's not structured in any particular way. Before they graduate, they have internships. Yeah. So I think we can do more. Do I want to go to a full co-op program? I think if you do, you have to have an alternative option, for those who can't land one. If you're not in a New York City or in LA where there's an abundance of opportunities and you don't have you've got a lot of first generation students who can't simply say, oh, I'm going to go work in Denver or in the Research Triangle in North Carolina for a summer, because that's going to cost me so much money to relocate. Some of the other things I've looked at, we have not instituted, are maybe creating a slightly longer path or maybe compressed path to education where we can get better internships by having a junior summer where you go to school in the summer of your junior year, but that opens it up for a 6-month internship or an 8-month internship, which a lot of firms and sometimes some of the more prestigious firms are more interested, would make our students more competitive in those firms.
Right. Yeah.
So talking about alternatives like that, where, maybe like Cincinnati, you take a little longer to graduate because you've built in a co-op there.
Yeah.
So I think there's things we can do, but I do want there to be reflection. So it's a very reflective, critical thinking about the two.
Yeah, I will say, to your point, I definitely experienced that firsthand. Like when I was there, it was just after the 2008 turmoil that happened with the economy, and it was tough. It was really tough, and it's a requirement of that program that you have to go on an internship. It's not like if you don't get it, there's a plan B. There is no plan B. You go or you're delayed. So yeah, I mean, it was kind of rough. It was, a lot of feelers out there and then not very many bites basically coming back for it's like, okay, who's on the hook for what? So yeah, a couple of people I think even were delayed because again, they just couldn't find anything.
Yeah. How long was your graduate program?
The graduate program Cincinnati was 3 years.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know that Cincinnati does this, but I've seen places where the bar gets lowered, and sometimes working at the kitchen unit at Home Depot counts, and it's like that worries me, right? Yeah. That some of those things I don't think are really great internships and don't produce a discussion the way they need to. So
yeah, no, I'm
in favor.
Yeah,
what can we do?
I'm glad I went to New York City after I graduated from Kent. That helped me. Honestly, travel in general, just being abroad, gave me that hunger to experience more of that big city living. And when I put myself in those environments, it was challenging because everything's more expensive and we have to work harder. But that molds us to be stronger and better, and we just learn a lot faster. If I can learn something in 2 years versus 4 years because of the stress and the intensity of that environment, I will choose that just based on my experience.
Yeah.
I mean, we all want to be comfortable, but that really helped me succeed and kind of put me on the path that I got on. So I appreciate that.
Does Mark, does Kent have like career fairs where like professionals will come in and set up tables? Like because when I was a student there at Kent State, I actually did internships over the summer before I went to Cincinnati. So like you said, a lot of the students will actually have internships. They'll go out during the summer or whenever they have a break from school, and they'll work somewhere in a practice. Is there something like that where Kent State will have professionals come in, set up tables, and kind of talk to the students?
Yeah, they're incredible. I mean, we have 4 a year. Construction management, which we also have, is a great program, around 350 students in it, and they have 2 career fairs a year. We just had 79 firms there. Now, and that's in fall and spring. In spring, we have the career fair for architecture, ID, landscape architecture, and healthcare design. We have about 75 firms come every time. And then a week later, we have a virtual one. And what I've been trying to do is, with the virtual one, is first of all, serve the people who are in Florence, but also to try to get more firms from the coasts and from further away so that our population sees that it's, their oyster is not just Northeast Ohio. There's nothing wrong with Northeast Ohio. It's great. There's a lot of great things going on here, but we've grown to be a very large program. And I'm not sure that can support all of our graduates.
Yeah, and you're attracting a lot of students out of state at this point, right? I remember when we went to school, it was mostly within the state of Ohio, and we had a few.
A few from Pennsylvania and other places,
Yeah, but now
what's interesting is, we're 23% out of state now. That's really been growing, and that's with a dramatic drop in international. So international, since I've been here, unfortunately, has gone from about 11% down to like 4%. And, that's because of geopolitical issues that we can't control. So our out-of-state population has really grown. And as has our population, our colleges now has almost doubled in size since I came. And we've added another. We renovated 22,000 square feet of studio on the other side of campus now.
Yeah, that's
wild. Because we
wild.
outgrew this building in a couple of years. It's really, really exciting. But yeah, we're moving forward in those ways, and we're excited about that.
Well, we got a few more minutes left, Mark. I just wanted to see if there's anything else you wanted to chat about, but I'd really like to know what advice would you give somebody who's young and in the program or just starting their career? Like, what's some inspiration that you'd like to provide, or anything else you'd like to discuss with us?
Well, if they're young and if they're in the program, I would say, travel. Set your horizons very high. Go to everything you can go to. Network with people. Don't just hang out only with the people in your studio, but get to know people in other disciplines. They're your future clients, and build networks and don't build bridges. But I would say get out, go to the Florence program, get an internship. We just had Georgia Coulter just came back, and I'm going to have her do I think a little radio show too, but we got her to go over to Frank Barco's office. He was a lecturer here. She came out to dinner with us. We kind of connected her with him. So she went and worked in Berlin for the last 6 months, and
awesome.
I want people to see a bigger horizon, go to some other places for your summer internships. And that's why whenever we do these trips, whether it's Stauffer taking people to DC or Tarnay, taking people where we've got students in LA right now. One of the requirements for me to sign off on any subsidies is they've got to go to at least 4 offices. So they go into offices and they get presentations, and they get to see small boutique offices and huge corporate firms, and maybe some allied practices. Maybe they go into a landscape firm. But the idea is for them to stand there, walk around an office, hear from the people, and think to themselves, I could work here. First of all, to have the confidence, but also to say, I wouldn't want to work here, or I would want to work here. Those are the kinds of things that we want to do to give them exposure and to give them confidence. But I would say just get out, be ambitious, own your education by being curious and trying things and not being afraid to take risks, and don't be afraid to fail, not the course, but to try something that didn't end up working out, and be honest about that when it doesn't. So, and have fun doing it. I mean, this is something, we're in a discipline where we do it because we love it. Most of us don't really retire. I mean, it is what we do and who we are, and we love doing it. And it's probably not the same if we treat it as a business only, but if we treat it as a craft, as a passion, as a work contributed to the world, it's just great. And we have fun doing it. And we tend to work too hard. But it's because we enjoy doing it.
Yes, we do.
I don't think that ever changes. When you're in school or once you get out, there's always a mountain of stuff to do. You're always walking uphill. But I mean, that's also what makes it so exciting and challenging. You know, if you don't have a challenge, then what's exciting?
Yeah. Well, you said it. It's part of us. It's who we are, and I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Well, these are exciting times, and we've got a lot of things facing us, and I think we have to take them seriously. Everywhere from the climate crisis and to emerging technology and how we're going to take that on, the housing crisis, education is changing. These are all things that our graduates, like you all, we're not just teaching you architecture. We're teaching architecture, but we're also teaching about trade-off optimization and very complex problems. Every building is a complex problem. It has a context, many contexts, social, physical, all of those things. And, we're teaching people to do something very complicated, to balance, not to optimize for one thing. And that's a skill set that can transfer over many, many different disciplines and gives us an ability to see things in a different way. And, I'm just going to go back to saying, we can't get to a point where we say education is not important. Education and expanding the mind and becoming a critical thinker and developing a mindset and being able to have that ability to imagine what doesn't already exist instead of mimicking what already exists, is so critical to the future of our society and humankind.
Mark, thanks so much for your time.
Thank you, Nick. Thanks, Paul. It's great. I really appreciate it.
This has been the ArcFluence Podcast. As always, you can get more information and additional content on arcfluence.com. Please subscribe on the platform of your choice and leave us a review. We'd love to hear from you.